Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. The Russian dictator has returned to the big stage, where he plays the role of a peace-loving leader who supposedly seeks negotiations. In reality, this performance is more like a parody, where the actor forgets his lines but continues to improvise so as not to take off his uniform and give the order to retreat. Now, over the past day, Putin has made a series of statements that look like an attempt to stall for time, confuse the West, and at the same time sell the world the old propaganda story about how it's Ukraine that keeps ruining Russia's noble efforts for a peaceful resolution. Credibility? About as much as when Moscow vowed it had no intention whatsoever of attacking Ukraine, only to have its tanks rolling a few days later.
Мы до сих пор получаем заходы о прекращении боевых действий там. Войска Украины уйдут из занимаемых ими территорий. Вот тогда и прекратятся боевые действия. Не уйдут, мы добьемся этого вооруженным путем. Вот и все. Да. Вы понимаете, вот я сейчас вот вам скажу, темп движения наших войск по этим всем направлениям увеличивается заметно. Но вот я сейчас просто не хочу совершать какой-то ошибки такой по количеству километров, но из месяца в месяц количество, так скажем, возвращаемых нашими войсками территорий на всех основных направлениях увеличивается. То есть темп движения войск увеличивается. Но самая, на мой взгляд, главная проблема для противника заключается в том, что у них растет разрыв между потерями и количеством военнослужащих, которые они в состоянии направлять на линию боевого соприкосновения.
Translated from Kremlinese, it sounds a bit like this. We actually don't care about any peace agreements. The war will be moving on. Now, Europe, upon hearing that, scratched its head, looked at the Kalibr missiles flying around, and collectively said, okay, so what was this about? Why were you negotiating in the first place? You know, paper can take anything, right? Especially Kremlin paper. It seems to have been specifically designed to easily turn into a tale of pure fantasy. Putin said Moscow is expecting American negotiators as early as next week, but if Russia really clings to the same unreasonable demands, then what is there to negotiate? Hopefully the Americans will finally have enough of Putin's shenanigans and simply tell him to put the fries in the bag. Putin is not offering negotiations, you see. He is offering delays, a fog of misinformation, and another series of propaganda entitled, "We're ready for dialogue, but only on our terms." And, you know, when Putin talks about peace, the best thing the world can do is check whether Russian troops haven't accidentally launched some sort of new offensive. Or perhaps if Russia isn't trying to hijack the negotiations process. Imagine losing creative control over your own peace deal. Another emotional outburst by Kremlin mouthpiece Vladimir Solovyov. Imagine a day when he doesn't have a temper tantrum on live TV. Yeah, I know, never gonna happen. This time, the Kremlin's favorite found a new target. Representatives of diasporas who allegedly take funds away from the veterans of the special military operation. You know, those people who went out there to kill innocent Ukrainians, to attack a neighboring country for money, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's those guys.
Этнические, твою мать, мафии! Назвать национальность этих мафий! Рядом, оказывается, после того, как жестко задержали подонков, угрожавших семье, ветераны СВО, появился кто-то из национальных диаспор и требует возбудить дела против сотрудников Росгвардии за то, что они жестоко задержали мерзавцев. Убить надо было мерзавцев! Завалить этих сволочей при задержании! Потому что они диверсанты. Вот как завалили двух диверсантов, которые пытались Пустить поезда под откос. А вы что считаете, те, которые приходят вымогать деньги, не диверсанты? Вы что считаете, что они граждане России? Может быть, у них есть паспорта, но они предатели нашей Родины, работающих в интересах укронацистов. Валить сволочей!
You know, I think we're kind of, behind the times when it comes to how a TV anchor should act. Like, if we're supposed to be following this kind of thing, if that's the latest trend, everyone should be like this sort of, military sergeant saying, call that a push-up all the way down, I am not sure about this. If I want to emulate Mr. Solovyov, hopefully this doesn't become the prevailing trend on live TV, all right? Anyway, if anyone still had doubts that Solovyov had finally transformed from a journalist into an emotional fire alarm, this latest broadcast is perfect proof of that. His entire line of argument consisted of 3 branches, namely, unalive them, we're using YouTube-friendly language here, destroy them, and execute them. Oh, and the reference to executing, that is not about clicking on an executable file, unfortunately. It is something else, more violent. Anyway, according to Solovyov, representatives of various diasporas receive state grants and take money away from the guys who are fighting in the war. It seems that Solovyov sincerely believes that the Russian budget is a basin of porridge from which someone is constantly pouring out stuff the wrong way. Although anyone who has seen the Russian budget system knows that it is not a basin, it's more like a colander. If it's liquid, it just won't stay in one of those. Sorry. Solovyov's hysteria about diasporas taking money from veterans would sound great, at least from Russia's perspective, if the Russian budget really was designed to spend money on veterans. But when the country is burning millions in a war that has no meaning and no future, any attempts to find the thieves, and possibly do something violent to them, look rather ridiculous, wouldn't you say? If there is no money in the budget for soldiers, medical treatment, compensation and social support, then the problem is not with the diaspora, humanitarian organizations or external enemies. The problem is the war itself. No economy can withstand endless carnage. And the only way to stop counting pennies is to stop counting the dead. In other words, stop the fighting. France is once again checking whether its security system is working properly, and it seems to be working quite well, thank you very much. 4 people have been detained on suspicion of working for Russian special services, with Anna Novikova, founder of the humanitarian association SOS Donbass, being the main figure of this story. According to documents, SOS Donbass appeared to be a typical French non-governmental organization, or NGO, that assists civilians in the conflict zone. In reality, according to the investigation, this structure had a completely different mission. It created a legitimate image in French society, opened doors to the business community, built contacts with local politicians, gathered information about France's economic interests, and, of course, promoted the traditional Russian propaganda set. Namely, civil war in Ukraine, Kiev is to blame, the West is provoking, stop the aid, and so on and so on. In short, it was a kind of humanitarian pressure cooker. Throw in a little information, add a dash of propaganda, and voila, you have a brand new agent of influence. After the mass expulsions of Russian diplomats in 2022, the Kremlin decided to act in a more creative way. Humanitarian associations, cultural centers, friendship clubs, compatriot societies, anything with a nice name and the ability to bring people together in a hall was the perfect tool for underhand influence. After all, who would suspect a charitable organization of espionage? It's not like a Russian embassy that might as well have a huge Spies R Us logo plastered on this facade. The SOS Donbass incident demonstrates that Moscow is not just gathering information, it is systematically building a network of agents of influence. In the West, right here, Russia is not just waging war against Ukraine, it is waging a covert war against all of Europe. And it is doing so not only with drones or, well-timed explosions in different places, but also with peaceful philanthropists who turn out to be little more than the FSB's little helpers. But no matter how much aura farming Russia does, it's always going to be a little bit sus, like it was this time. Busted. And with this, we end this edition of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.